welcome into the Daily Deep Cut, brought to you by the Beat Sessions. I'm your host, Mitchell Weary. Brand new show coming to you at the morning, Monday through Friday. Seems pretty simple. Idea here is that we're going to focus on a deep cut of the day, picking songs from albums that we're going to pick a theme each week too. This week starting off with 90s alternative music. Talking about Smashing Pumpkins yesterday, much to the chagrin of one of my friends. She'll be very pleased to see that we're talking about Tool today and the song Eulogy. Now, if you're not familiar with this track, it is the second song off of their second full-length LP, Aniema, that was released in 1996. Decade-defining, honestly, if you're going to ask me straight up. And I know I'm a little biased because I'm a big fan of this band. But this is an album that dropped and no one in the world sounded like Tool. And this was like the first time that I think I really started getting into anything that was associated with metal. I was usually mostly just in the rock and roll lane of things when it came to music. Would listen to a little hip hop, would listen to a little country, a little folk, just depending on who I was around growing up. If it was my taste, though, I was pretty much rolling with the likes of Green Day, the likes of Pearl Jam, the likes of Nirvana. And so the first time I heard this, I was just blown away by the entire record from start to finish. And certainly you crack open the album and the artwork and a lot of the other thematic nature of this record, talking about let's basically talk about the substances, focusing on the idea of therapy through psychedelics. This album dedicated to the memory of Bill Hicks, influences of Carl Jung throughout this thing as well. Timothy Leary is another one as well that comes to mind when we talk about this idea of therapy, this release, this other side and this perspective. And I think as Tool's career has gone on and as they've continued to make music, that the essence of their art has really captured that idea of transcending the human experience, that idea of being able to step outside of our bodies. It's a very common thing. I like to talk about Edmund Burke, his theories of the sublime, how he approaches life, or how he argues how you should approach it, and that when we wake up every day, the things that challenge us, the things that scare the hell out of us, are the things that make us feel the most alive. When we can overcome ourselves and our own limitations, that's when we really get to see not just our full potential, but the full potential of life and what it has to offer. So I'm a big believer in that. Call me hippie, call me what you will. But from time to time, yes, I will be the first on this channel to admit I'm not recommending it. Not a doctor, I'm not recommending it, but for me personally, yes, I've found that a psychedelic trip from time to time is just an excellent way of hitting the refresh button and of tapping into your subconscious and into your psyche in ways that you just aren't able to otherwise. There's this, this idea that there's so much potential in our brain, but we use such a limited amount of it, and what limits doors to perception. Aldous Huxley talks about this. He talks about how our physical needs, the simple means of breathing, of doing what we need to stay alive, so eating, finding shelter, procreating, basically we're sexual creatures. It's what we're programmed to do. We are programmed to come here to reproduce and then be gone, basically. I know there's more to life than that, but biologically speaking, that in a nutshell, that's where we're at. But with these substances, with these experiences, you're able to suppress that part of your mind, of your subconscious, so to speak, this need to stay alive. And I mean, it's an interesting dichotomy there when you think about it. Like, you're suppressing the need to stay alive to feel more alive. I've always found that to be a fascinating thing. But this record, Aniema, is something special, lyrically, sonically, again, a genre and decade-defining record. There was no one like this band at the time, and this record, I mean, the visual art too, if you've seen any of their music videos. Adam Jones, actually, their guitar player, before being like just fully involved with this band, worked in film and was is an artist, designed all of that stuff. I mean, it's just incredible to watch the man work, to see what he's done over the years visually for this band. And I think that that's a big part of why it's so exciting to see them. I mean, when they're in their element, I mean, musically, they're so well rehearsed. They're one of the tightest outfits out there, I'd argue. But the visual stimulation that you get when you go to their live shows, the light shows, I mean, the lasers that are just flying around everywhere, the visuals that are on the backdrop there for you to enjoy. There's an impressive amount of work that goes into the production of their live show. So if you're a fan of these guys, if you've never had a chance to see them, I'd say that they are one of those acts that I know concert tickets are expensive these days, but they're worth the money. I would say treat yourself and go check these out. And so this song, Eulogy by Tool, speaking of live performances, I'm excited to talk about this actually. This is a song that I mentioned my friends earlier. I've seen Tool with them 7 times. I've seen them a total of 8. I've seen Tool 7 times with my friends. The first time that I saw them without them, they did play Eulogy. And ever since then, we have never seen them. So my friends have never actually been to a show where the song has been played. It was played as the opener the first time I saw them when they were touring for Lateralis. And it was an incredible moment. I believe it was the Chandler drumline that Danny Carey's, I think it was his nephew, was playing for. But when the show starts, the lights drop, and there's just this whole line of drummers that come out. And you're kind of like, what is going on? And I remember too that we had tickets out on the lawn of this venue, and there was this we'll just call them the Juggernaut. There's a couple of juggernauts that we have in the history of Tool, but this Juggernaut basically was like, everybody move forward. And I just remember the most chaotic scene of all of these individuals jumping over this fence. There's nothing that security could have even done. And we were so far back, and my 2 friends and I mean, we ended up basically like 4th or 5th row, just like crammed into the front of this venue. Absolutely wild. But the Chandler drum line opens up Eulogy. And if you're familiar with the song, then you know why that's so cool. If you're not familiar with this track, this is a song that's like roughly 8.5 minutes long. And it's got a big percussive opening. It's just driven by they sound like Danny Carey is just clinking glass bottles, and then this like psychedelic, I'm pretty sure it's guitar production from Adam, but this sound, it almost kind of sounds like an Eastern just wind instrument, something obscure, something that none of us would see or hear on a regular basis in Western music, not even just modern Western music, but I mean throughout the history of I'd say the 20th century. Very unique sound. And so big ol' open, and the Chandler drum line comes out, and they do this open all in unison, all together. And that's as the band begins to walk out and set their positions and do their thing. And it's just such a stellar moment to be able to see that song live, but to be able to see it delivered in such exceptional circumstance is really one of my favorite memories in live music in general. First time I get to see the band, there's just this chaotic moment, this rush. And then, the first song essentially that I hear from this band live is a song that is elusive to a lot of fans. If you've seen Eulogy before, please chime in the comments and share your experience, because I know a handful of friends that they've never had a chance to see the song live, and it's definitely that experience, the ability for that to happen one day is the reason that they continue to buy tickets. And I'm always happy to go hang out with them and check this band out, because they are exceptional. That big intro though, talking about that, it's just beautiful the way that it works up. It builds this tension. I feel a number of songs on this record, given the thematic content. Aniema is a combination of the Latin term for soul, something that it's a word that Carl Jung used a lot, and then the term Aniema. We all know what that is. So there's this fun contrast. It's snarky Tool at its finest, I would say. These guys very sardonic sense of humor, very crude sense of humor sometimes. They're not shy about really being in your face, and I love that about the band. It's one of my favorite things when it comes to their perspective. They don't sugarcoat. They don't, they're not here to like fluff up any idle or false ambition. They are here to tell you that life is short, and be true to yourself, be true to form, don't be a dick. I think is one of their big messages too. This particular song, though, it's interesting when you jump into the old recesses of the internet and you start reading about it. Tool fans are one of a kind in that regard, and I think that the lyrics of this track, we'll pull them up here shortly, are just a perfect example of why Maynard is such a fantastic writer, why he's such prolific is definitely not the right word, because this band probably could have released more material over the years, but he just is so insightful and writing in a way that is poetic, writing in a way where lyrics can be interpreted in multiple different levels. This is a band that is not going to tell you directly what something is about. That's not the point of it. I think that their goal, their objective, much like the people that they're focusing on in this record from a positive standpoint, here, take my hand and I will guide you through the door. But once we're through the door, once we're in the room, it's up to you to wander around, to find your way, to do your thing. And I think that that's important. I think it's important to have spiritual Sherpas, let's call them that, people that are there to guide you, but there's a level of needing to do things on your own terms, of doing things on your own accord and finding your own way that truly is at the heart of this record. And I think that the first interpretation, the first big one about this song in particular, Eulogy, this is a record that is dedicated to Bill Hicks, the entire album, and a lot of songs that certainly reflect the band's love, the band's veneration for him, his career, and what he brought to the table. They talk about how they very much felt like the trajectory of Bill Hicks was in line with the trajectory of Tool, as far as what both artists were trying to do for their fan base and for even people outside of that fan base, especially, I would argue, because they're the ones that I think need to oftentimes listen to what both Tool and to what Bill were saying about society, about culture, about the world in and of itself. And so the fact that this track is here to eulogize Bill Hicks is an interesting take on this. I'm not saying that it is the absolute one. I think that in a lot of ways it is the one that makes the most sense when you read the lyrics. And it's Maynard's intonation when he sings that makes this song so interesting, because it sounds like the subject of the song is someone that he is vehemently just scorching. It sounds like an arrogant, almost kind of like megalomaniac type of individual that Maynard is calling out for their abuse of their power. And again, that's another interpretation as well. I think that reading the lyrics and rolling down this song, you can certainly see that perspective. And I think that's cool. And I think that, Bill Hicks being who he was, he's the type of guy that there's moments in this song where, I'll just skip to the very end where he says, standing above a crowd, he had a voice that was strong and loud, and I swallowed his facade because I'm so eager to identify with someone above the ground, someone who seemed to feel the way, someone prepared to lead the way, and someone who would die for me. And then he goes, will you now? Would you die for me? Would you fucking lie? Or would you die for me? Don't you fucking lie. Don't you step out of line. Don't you step out of line. Don't you fucking lie. There's this bitterness. There's this anger, this angst, and this tension that seems to build with that line. But I also think that Bill Hicks was the type of guy that shared that sardonic sense of humor, that wit that would, read into some of these lines that seem like, maybe they're giving him shit and calling him out a little bit. He's exactly the type of individual that would have appreciated that kind of eulogy. Bill Hicks wasn't here to, again, provide, sunshine and rainbows for everybody, to kiss babies and to do all the things. Bill Hicks was very insightful, but also, scathingly honest about his opinion on things. And, the reference to Arizona Bay and the song Aniema, the title track, is a big homage to him as well. Going back to that song. But I think that, the Bill Hicks interpretation is a great one. The other ones that are out there that are interesting, Henry Rollins, there was a falling out with Henry and after the release of Undertow. So some people claim that this song is about that falling out there. That one feels a little loose. I'm not necessarily sure how I feel about that one. Kurt Cobain is one that comes to mind. Again, that's one that, maybe a little bit. There's the whole idea of ranting and pointing his finger at everything but his heart. We'll miss him. We'll miss him. Standing above the crowd. He had a voice that was strong and loud. We'll miss him. We'll miss him. There's connections there, certainly, as from a poetic standpoint. But the Kurt Cobain one always felt like a little bit of a reach. And then there's the discussion of L. Ron Hubbard, whom also is discussed multiple times on this record, and not in the positive light that Bill Hicks is spoken about, and rightfully so, because fuck Scientology. I'll just say it. It is a ridiculous religion. I don't know why all the Hollywood yahoos and elites buy into that crap, but L. Ron, certainly, you could certainly see where, if you wanted to look at the lyrics in the context of providing a scathing indictment of someone and their BS, you could certainly say that this particular song falls into that category, and that you could do that. But what I will say is that, what I love about Maynard's writing style, this particular song, is the way it is so open-ended. And oftentimes I feel songwriters don't necessarily intend for that to happen, but that is the beauty of being able to write in this way, is that life happens, experience opens up. And I'm going to go back to one more experience with Tool in the live show. The time before, the second to last time that I saw them, they closed with Stinkfist. And what I love about a Tool show is that they have a very strict no cell phone rule. Don't get busted. They'll kick you out. I've seen plenty of people get away with sneaking videos and stuff, but I've also seen people get the flashlight on them and told to get the hell out. And I appreciate that, because I pay good money for those tickets, and I don't want to see a bunch of cell phone screens in front of my face when all those amazing laser light shows are happening and all these other visuals are going down. Your phones are fucking that up. So stop that stuff. And Tool is very passionate about keeping that, that level of integrity involved with their show. So they close with Stinkfist, and Maynard says, "I know that thing has been itching in your pocket like a crack pipe, so why don't you go ahead and bust it out?" And it's crazy, because everybody just busts out their phones, and then the band starts playing Stinkfist, and lo and behold, Maynard just probably so pleased with himself, knowing that wrote a song 30 years ago. we all know what Stinkfist is about. The title says it in and of itself, but 30 years on afterwards, it becomes the perfect analogy for this thing and our addiction to it. And I just think that is another incredible example of when you approach songwriting in a way that and I do love songwriters that write about a specific time and place and get into detail, and they do all that great storytelling. But there's something about songwriters like Maynard who are able to write in such a way that it leaves things so open-ended to interpretation. Eulogy and all the tracks, for the most part, on this track are a big example of that interpretation. And again, giving their audience the ability to think for themselves and to decide for themselves. And I like that they're so adamant about saying that, hey, like, there isn't any right or wrong answer necessarily. It's not necessarily about just one thing. A song, a movie, a piece of art can be about a lot of different things, and Eulogy certainly is. What I do a quick little rundown talking about that introduction, though, and I just remember hearing the the opening, that percussion for the first time. And I think it has such a strong impact coming off the opener, Stinkfist. Most of us are familiar with that track. Big, heavy number, big opener on that record. One of the shorter tracks, too, that isn't like a little, interlude. It's, just a really in-your-face, hard 5 minutes. And then the song ends and it kind of drifts into quiet. And that's when you hear that percussion come in and just slowly builds. You get those textures again from the number of different percussive elements that Danny's working with. And Adam Jones, his guitar finally hits about 2 minutes in, and just a really good heavy riff, keeping things open, loose, and minimal. With that riff, though, it doesn't come hard right out the gate, but it has a heavy presence, and I really like the way that the tension builds in the first part of the song. He had a lot to say. He had a lot of nothing to say. We'll miss him. He had a lot to say. He had a lot of nothing to say. We'll miss him. Talking, about any of the subjects that we just discussed. It's really open-ended, really open to interpretation there. I still think Bill Hicks is the subject for sure. So long. We wish you well. You told us how you weren't afraid to die. I feel like that is a big reference to Bill there too. He was fearless, and even if he was afraid, he never conveyed that sense. It never felt like with his illness and with that experience, as quick as it was, that he had any fear. Like, he knew what his purpose was here on this earth, what he was put here to do, and did it with the time that was allotted to him. And I think he really saw it simply as that. Really a unique, one of a kind guy. Not all martyrs see divinity, but at least you tried. And I think that's an interesting, unique line as well. I think that there's an element of empathy in those lines there. I think that as you get towards the back of the song, and it feels like there's more of an accusational tone, like there's more of a pointing the finger at a false idol, so to speak. That's a line where I keep that in mind too, because it's a big composition. Again, 8.5 minutes. But I think the idea that there's a lot of good people that I've encountered in my life. I think that all of us have met good, kind people that they're not discussed in the newspaper every day. You don't see highlights on the news about their daily acts of kindness, what they bring to the table, what they've provided for society, just with their presence. Just those exceptional people that we know that are one of a kind, and really it's not even about going out of their way. It just is their way to lead by example and to set a good example, to live in a way that people can, they can look upon these people and identify what is right and wrong, what is integrity, what does it mean to wake up and to put your best foot forward, and to lead by example. And I think that in focusing on oneself and trying to just be the best individual that you can be, staying in your lane in that regard too, people notice that. People take note. Not always, but those individuals that are looking for some type of inspiration, that are looking for some type of muse to help correct the ship, to help them understand, to lead their lives in a better way. So I think that portion of the song, those couple lines, really just exceptional. But then there's the ranting and pointing his finger at everything but his heart. I think that to a certain degree, Bill's the kind of guy that, his just vociferous rundown of society, the way that his perception, his outlook, it comes from a place of good. It comes from a place of genuine sincerity, a guy that just wants to see people do better by themselves and by the world. it's not a big thing to ask. But he wasn't always the most gentle about it. So I see those lines as kind of an interesting take and maybe a little bit of a poke at Bill. And again, it's something that he would have appreciated. The breakdown in this song is really cool. It goes heavy during the chorus, and then there's I don't necessarily think it's like a middle eight necessarily, but there's just a breakdown. And I really like when he's like, I'm too smart when you're invisible. Excuse me. I'm too smart when you're invisible by the bone symbol on you. So he bashes his skull through the window while looking out to the sea, like torment of my ego, and we're amused by this. And then it's really just an exceptional part. He's almost kind of like on this muted megaphone at this portion of the song. There's just this big rolling bass element from Justin. And I will note that this particular song, I've seen so much over the internet these days, but Paul D'Amour, I don't think he necessarily gets the credit that he deserves for what he contributed to the development of the Tool sound. And his bass guitar, man, what he did on Undertow is pretty exceptional. And songwriting credits on Aniema all over. The first 3 tracks, Stinkfist, Eulogy, and H, and then Push It, and the title track as well, Aniema, credited to him. I know that Justin has done a lot of amazing work with this band over the year, and especially you look at Lateralis and what this band did with the album that followed Aniema. Certainly exceptional work. But just want to give a shout out to Paul as far as contributing to this particular song and his contributions to Tool and to this record. And he may not have been with the band for very long, but I think that his impact is certainly still felt in this outfit, and it's cool to have him have been a part of it. And I know that these guys, they amicably parted ways. It was what it was. So. Wrapping things up here on this track, I think that you get this big outro, aggressive, in your face, and the lyrics can be interpreted in a number of ways despite the intensity and the anger and the build that you hear in Maynard's cadence there. But ultimately, at the end of the day, I got to go with the Bill Hicks interpretation. And going to leave off on a note, just going to burn Robert Christgau a little bit because he ragged on the Smashing Pumpkins. We were talking about them yesterday. He said that this album was a dud. I think his perspective is a dud. I know he's been a critic for a number of years, but I don't know. I feel like the guy doesn't like anything that I'm a big fan of, anything that we talk about a lot on the channel. And I don't know, to each their own, but I think his perspective is kind of bonk. I think that he's got his little pocket of the world where he's kind of like in that elite. He's standing above the crowd, and and people are so, they're so willing to look up and praise. But no, I'm not a fan of the dude, and I think he's absolutely wrong about this record, about this song. I think that Aniema and the deep cut Eulogy are a massive part of what framed the last 30 years of rock and roll, and where you saw so many artists, alternative artists, play with metal artists play with alternative rock, and then just the progression of alternative metal, the progression of post metal, all these different ideas and songs, bands that have formed based on the potential that they saw with what Tool was doing at the time with this record and their music. So it's pretty much all I've got to say about Eulogy. That is your deep cut of the day, and I hope that you guys get some time to play this thing. Keep in mind, again, it's another big one, 8.5 minutes long, but take a moment out of your day to check out this song. I hope you enjoy it, and we will see you tomorrow on the Daily Deep Cut.